Okay, okay,
That's just ridiculous.
Let's do a survey here, and I'm gonna do this survey with everybody who I ever talked to about how many times have you been called the N word in like the last 5 years? Just give me a round estimate. Let's who wants to go first?
Once.
Once. Who was that? Nick?
No,
No,
that
that
was
was me.
Solomon.
That was Solomon. Solomon's been called it once. All right. Who else? Who's next?
I think I could say maybe one or two.
One or two. Noah.
Yeah, I'll say like 3 because I get called an NB.
Yeah, they always got to.
Or I get called a black bee too.
Yeah, they got to tag team the racism and the misogyny on the internet. Yeah, so 3 for you. I would say 5 for me because I'm from Florida and it's kind of about it down there in Florida. It's real crazy. All right, so let's go to other things of that are less blatant types of systemic racism that you feel or that you could prove. Not even if you can't prove it, but you feel actually hindered you in something that you tried to do, or racial profiling. Just give me a nice round number. Let's go with Solomon first.
I don't know. That's actually hard for me. I mean, I've gone to like I went to like black, except for a few years, I went to black-centered private schools for most of my life. So it was a very, I realized very quickly how much of an insulated bubble I was in as soon as I wasn't. But I can't think of a specific instance where.
Well, I can give you about 20 dozen of those. Who else got one? Nick?
I mean, I live a very privileged life. I don't know the. In terms of police problems, I've had 2.
2. Okay, cool. Noah, how many do you think you got?
At least a dozen, if not more. My first job out of law school was working for a nonprofit in Chicago, doing the good fight, public housing, public education law and policy. I was only the second black attorney they had in their 45-year history, I believe. Jeez. Even though, it was overwhelmingly black and Latino people they were seeking to serve. There were microaggressions upon I had never experienced such, out of all of my experiences, that stands out in the past 10 years or so. That stands out the most because I really thought I was going into a certain type of environment. Oh, it's nonprofit. Oh, this is progressive work. But white progressives are sometimes some of the worst people when it comes to racial stuff, because at least with the other folks they're racist and you can deal with them. With the white progressives,
yeah, you
can't, because they don't understand, or they don't care to understand what they're doing.
I had my hair touched. I am so good.
Yeah, I had my hair touched. My executive director touched my hair because he didn't understand how my hair worked. I had someone else make jokes about how I look like one of those machine gun carrying girls. Like, there's probably just a dozen in that one office. Okay. Alone. And as an attorney, I got paired to work with their director of education on a project, and she was not my supervisor. She's older and had more education, but she wasn't my supervisor. We were co-running a program, and she got mad at me because I wouldn't do something for her, and I was like, I don't answer to you though. And she comes in my office and starts yelling and cursing at me. So it's been a bunch.
It's been a bunch. So let's move you up to 50 in the last 10 years. Would that be 50 experiences that have been like either microaggressions, systemic racism?
Probably so, yeah. And that,
let's give you 100, right? Let's give you 100 over the last. I'll give myself, since I'm from Florida and Mississippi. Well, and that's the thing you said. You hit it on the head, right? In Mississippi, which is a red state, blood red state, we just had a mutual understanding that we didn't like each other, and so we actually ended up liking each other and had mutual respect. In Florida, it was supposed to be this, certain parts, South Florida, not North Florida, liberal, right? And it was just as racist as any place I've ever been in my life. So I'm going to give myself 75 over the last 10 years. Encounters with the police, microaggressions. Just now, the reason I'm asking this is because I want to compare it to how many times, and I know Solomon, you're a little young.
Yeah, but I mean, like 10 years ago, I was 10.
Right.
So are you really that young?
This question won't apply to you, Solomon. Right? It's going to apply to those of us that are a little bit older. Maybe you can extrapolate to your family, right? How many times have you guys had economic problems in the last 10 years?
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, don't put your business out here. Let's just give us a round number.
Yeah, no, seriously. I mean, it's rough. It is only started getting better once I regrouped and moved with my parents home to Atlanta. So, yep. I mean, but I had kids young young. I had kids when I was in college, so I've been a single
That's
parent since I was in school. So it's
but
been a
that's
hustle.
it's a reality in America. That's like your
It's been a
story.
struggle. Yeah.
Your story is replicated, even though your story is unique. It's still
Yeah.
replicated. What about
And
you?
even with help from their dad, I mean, running two households is still expensive. So,
Insanely expensive. I don't know. I can't imagine doing that. Nick, what do you got?
Well, I think I've never been privileged. When I was born, like I had to sleep in a dresser drawer instead of a baby crib. So that's
mm,
and like basically my grandmother. I live with my mom, my grandmother, my single family household, single parent. Excuse me. I just live with my mom, my grandmother. But I would say I didn't really become free until I graduated college.
Mm.
So once I
mhm.
graduated college, it was just like you just come up and that was it. There's no more problems from
Mm.
day one.
Wow.
First check, poverty was gone.
Shit, where do you work, man? What kind of work you do? Okay, all right, no problem. We'll talk about that offline. And Solomon, you're saying can you extrapolate to your
Yeah,
family?
yeah. I can't even be in the same area as the struggle bus you guys are talking about. I can't. I feel
There's nothing
uncomfortable.
wrong with that, though.
But that's cool. But see, that's cool. So let's say 3 out of 4, because if I told y'all some economic struggles, y'all be like, well, I didn't grow up in a dresser drawer. I can't relate to that, but I can relate to lights being off. I can relate to not having food. I can
hmm
relate to having to go to WIC and having to go with food stamps. I
Yep.
can relate to all of those experiences growing up, and it doesn't stop. Like it doesn't stop for some people with their first paycheck. Some people first paycheck is gone out the window. So the reason I just did that little I don't know, not experiment. I just went through that was because in reality they try to keep us united around race, but all of us have so many disparate experiences with race. But what we experience in economics on average, and this bears out in the statistics, there are a lot of African Americans who are in poverty. There are a lot of African Americans who are living paycheck to paycheck. And when we start dividing based on those economic issues, we have interests that are totally different. And it's like you said, Anoa, is that they keep us blinded with the conversation about race. And they do the same thing with white Republicans. They keep them
hmm
blinded by their hatred and their bigotry. So I just wanted to really do a quick survey and see where you guys were coming from, because I have experienced a lot of racism in my life, but I've had far more intimate experiences with poverty in my life than I've
Yeah.
ever had experiences with racism.
But I
And the
mean that.
racism experiences haven't been so like overtly like life shattering either. It's stressful. It's stressful. It's inconvenient. But like you were saying, like if you're missing a student loan payment or anything, that level of stress, that financial stress, that not knowing where you're going to be able to make this, can I make my car payment? Can I do this? What bill am I paying? When, whose connection notice is going to get handled first? Like that level of stress is so continuous and so prevalent across the board for so many people. We can't keep disregarding it and saying it doesn't matter. Like it's not an issue. Like most of us are doing fine. You're speaking for yourself. I'm doing fine now, but I can remember a time when I wasn't.
Yeah, I can remember
So and
that when I wasn't either. and I think
it
that's
wasn't
the
that
thing.
long ago.
It was like, man, like what, 3 4 months ago. I was like, God damn, how we gonna make it? No, 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 no.
But the thing is,
Listen, Boston, let me tell you, like going to places where you have no control over your cost of living is breathtaking. It's astonishing, right? Moving from Florida to Boston is just something I don't recommend for anybody, because as good as we were doing in Florida, and we got to the cost of living here in Boston, it was like it took us about a good year just for us to be like, okay, now we can chill. But what I realize is that there's two types of people. There's people who, even though if you didn't grow up in that kind of circumstance, right? You didn't grow up in poverty, or you didn't, but you still identify with it enough to realize something needs to be done about it. And then you have other people who grew up in poverty and they make it out and they're like, I'm rich, bitch, I'm gone, and have no regard for the other people that are left behind. And I feel like that's a lot what happens with the black middle class and middle class in general, right? This is not just indicative of black people. I think this happens across the board. You have some people who remember what it was like and feel like we need to change the system so that other people never have to go through that. And then you have those who get theirs and all they're worried about is keeping theirs.
Wait,
but I mean,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, compared back to the thought experiment that I used to bring this up, is that I knew, maybe it has something to do with the privileges I had growing up. I tried to make sure I understood as much as I could economically about the difference between black experiences from where I am to black experiences in different backgrounds and areas and income brackets, but I had always assumed that, like, if there was some way that a third party could be made that could better attune to black issues and the struggle economically to fix systemic problems with the black working class, that the black community would immediately turn to that part. It was like a foregone conclusion to me, in the same way it was a foregone conclusion to me that the black community would go to Bernie Sanders when they saw what he was about.
Oh,
and
man.
that one was not true at all. And so thinking about whether if an opportunity for them to not only join a party that would be more reliably with them on issues, but one that they could help form themselves, we would shift. That was my thinking. It was, of course, like how could we not? And when I think about, like, go different, like, how about old black voters in their 30s, young black voters, activists, ones who are disillusioned, there has to be some brackets where, like, no, they definitely take this opportunity.
Yep.
But I'm not sure anymore.
No, I think there's a contingent that would take advantage of it. But we're saying the black
community
Democratic establishment? No, I want to narrow it down to the black Democratic establishment. No way in hell. They're getting too much from the establishment. Now, to the people that in their sphere of influence, I doubt it. I doubt that they would go, because they trust they trust their frat. They trust their soror. They trust their church member. They trust their pastor. And so it's the people outside of those spheres of influence that really are up for grabs. And I think that might transcend a lot of other communities as well. Nick, you were about to get in there and say something.
Yeah, I was going to say, to get off into that, Angela Davis went on and did an interview on Democracy Now! I don't know if anybody else saw that or not, but she did an interview with Democracy Now! And this goes back to what Anoa said once before. What she got up there and did is basically show why some people don't like the left. And it happened again. She basically said that Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton are the same when it comes to black issues, because because Bernie Sanders has not been educated in a certain language, and that he doesn't speak in a certain way. And I think at a certain point we have to get around that. This need
equivalency enraged me. She was like, she listed all the policy reasons why Hillary Clinton is horrible, but then she's like, well, Bernie doesn't use these pronouns correctly. So
he's in the same
there's
bucket.
There's no real race candidate here. That's good.
And what I want to say is, I think we have to get out of that and stop relying on the language of identity and all of that, and start looking at, okay, these policies do these things. These are the effects, and really kind of start going towards policy instead of like a cult of personality. Because I think when you use identity politics and you get off in the cult of personality, you can be tricked, and it's so easy to want to defend somebody that you like and get off in there and, oh, he's great, or oh, she's great, and she hasn't done crap for us.
Well, I think if you dig a little deeper, though, let's take Obama, because till I die, till he die, I'm still going to defend President Obama on several things. Number one, well, I'm not even going to go through the litany, but you have to be able to go beyond the superficial analysis to even to have something with meat in it, right? Everybody has this superficial thing that goes on with their interpretation of President Obama. He's our first black president, and he's the most, and then they redefine progressivism to say he's been the most progressive president, all these types of things. No, both of those are the wrong answers. There's only one defense for President Obama, in my opinion, and that is that he was the power of the office and the power of this paradigm. Like, people like to say, we African Americans have done so bad underneath President Obama. Truth is, African Americans have been doing a very long time, even before President Obama. So I'm not going to lay that at his feet. But it's only with that type of critical analysis that you can actually say, okay, President Obama was not what we needed him to be, but he's not the devil, right? He's not the worst person in the world. He's not. I'm not going over there with Cornel West on President Obama. However, they need the Democratic Party, particularly the establishment, more specifically the black political establishment. They need us to view exactly what you said, Nick, this through the lens of simplicity. They need us to look at Barack Obama and say he's our brother, so we must defend him, without allowing us any nuance to say he's our brother, I want to defend him, but he's failed in this regard, and so we can do better. But I still would defend him, but I know we can do better. They will not allow that conversation to exist in the black community, because you know what it does? It undermines the Democratic establishment, not just the black establishment, but the Democratic establishment. And so
Let me add a level to that.
go ahead.
On top of that, if they do notice those things, they are taught to subjugate their criticism in order to fall in line and stay in line, because to bring up that criticism is to damage the party, and you're trying to put like a loyalty to a party versus your own personal ideology.
And that's, Nick, you just brought this shit
Well,
full circle.
black people, we don't talk about our personal business out in the street, period. So that goes like what
Yeah,
exactly
what
what you're saying.
What we're doing is blasphemy in the black community. But
It is.
that goes back full circle, Nick. It goes back full circle to the very top of the conversation, which is we would rather redefine ourselves than to bring principled criticism to people who we admire and people we feel that we should defend. And I don't understand how difficult this is. And I keep going with this analogy. Like, are you married? Are you in a relationship? Are you in a healthy relationship? Because there's not a single healthy relationship where you have to sacrifice loving someone in exchange for criticizing someone. In actuality, it's the exact opposite. If I love you, I am going to bring critique to you so that we can be in love better together. They don't want that. They want you to say, if you love President Obama, if you love the Democratic Party, if you love the D and you want to unite blue, accept them exactly the way they are and never, ever criticize them. And shit just does not work like that in real life. Nothing that's healthy. You know what that is? That's an abusive relationship. Run away from that as quickly as possible.